Well, this morning, I would like to take you on a journey. And for this journey, what I want to look at, what does it look like for a people and a country that is spiraling downward? I mean, this place where it's spiraling downward, seemingly out of control. Now, I know for you, this may be like super hard to imagine, but imagine with me, if you will. What would it look like for a country and a people to be spiraling out of control? And not spiraling out of control, but spiraling downward out of control. To which you may say to yourself, yeah, I know exactly what that feels like. And I know exactly how that feels because that's where I feel like we're at right now. And in that, we would say that not only is it spinning out of control, but it's probably more specifically, it's spinning out of your control. It's spinning out of my control. And so in these places we go, well, what does this look like? And so it's not hard for you to picture. But this morning what I want to do is I want to look at a story in the Bible where this is happening. Now, it may not surprise you if we were going to look at a story in the Bible that talked about the downward spiral of a people, the downward spiral of a country. It may not surprise you that we would find ourselves in the book of Judges. Now, you may or may not be familiar with the book of Judges, but the book of Judges, it comes as the seventh book in the Old Testament. The first 5 books are attributed to Moses, the Pentateuch. And really what that covers is from the beginning, creation in the beginning, right? And then when we end it, it's Moses standing on the edge of the promised land, but is going to die before he goes in. So really it covers this idea of the beginning. It covers the creation and the formation of the people of Israel. It covers their time in slavery down in Egypt. The first 5 books covers then Moses taking them out of that slavery, right? God taking them out of that slavery into the wilderness for 40 years. And as they wander for 40 years, then the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, close as Moses is standing on the edge of that promised land, looking at it and ready to go in. But then he dies there. Then the 6th book of the Old Testament is the book of Joshua. And really the book of Joshua is all about then Moses dies, and then Joshua leads the people of Israel into the land of, the people of Israel into the land of Israel to conquer the land. And so really, if you read the book of Joshua, it's a lot of it's just about conquest, about conquesting and conquering this land that God has given them. Interestingly enough, that God had given it to them, right? But they were going to have to fight for it. And so we see that's the book of Joshua. And really the book of Joshua ends with sort of this sense of optimism. There they are, the people of Israel in the land of Israel. And although there is still time to be conquered, is that the land has been divided up into the 12 tribes of Israel, and each tribe has been given its portion. And so really the book of Joshua ends on sort of an optimistic note. That's where Joshua says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's the bumper sticker, right? The t-shirt, the plaque that you put up in your house. That's where it comes from. And then we get the book of Judges. In the book of Judges, you could title under the heading of, this is why we can't have nice things. We get the book of Judges. And really the book of Judges is this cycle. It's this downward spiral. And really the way that it starts is that the people of God rebel against God. And when they rebel against God, then God turns them over to their enemies. Once they're turned over to their enemies, they cry out to God for a deliverer. God sends a deliverer or a judge to deliver them. And then there's peace in the land. And then, guess what happens? Next phase. They rebel against God. And then God turns them over to their enemies. And then they cry out to God. And then God sends a deliverer. And really, this is the cycle of the book of Judges. And what it is this downward spiral. And each round on the slinky, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse until you get to the end of Judges. Rinse and repeat. And so my question is, what does it look like for a country, and in this case, specifically the people of God, to be in rebellion? What does it look like for them to be in rebellion? And probably more importantly, the question is, where does that rebellion lead them? What does that look like? And so it should not surprise you then that we're going to look at the end of the book of Judges, where it's sort of this culmination of this rebellion. And so if you have your Bibles, turn with me. We're going to start in Judges chapter 17 and moving forward. It says this in chapter 17, verse 1. There was a man of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Micah. And he said to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver that were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse, and also spoke in my ears, behold, the silver is with me. I took it. And his mother said, Blessed be my son by the Lord. And he restored the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother. And his mother said, I dedicate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son, to make a carved image and a metal image. Now, therefore, I restore it to you. So when he restored the money to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave it to a silversmith, who made it into a carved image and a metal image. And it was in the house of Micah. And the man Micah had a shrine. And he made an ephod and household gods, and ordained one of his sons who became his priest. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And so Micah, and by the way, Micah literally means like who is like Yahweh in this translation. It's who is like Yahweh. And the question really is like the idea of Micah is who is like Yahweh. The answer is no one's like Yahweh. And so this Micah, who is like Yahweh, he lives in the hills of Ephraim. Now, when we think about Israel, for whatever reason, we often think desert, but actually think green rolling hills more than you do flat sand. And so he lives in the hills of Ephraim, and he steals 1,100 pieces of silver from his mom. And his mom finds out, eventually, right? Finds out. As soon as she finds out, she does what probably most moms would do when they found out that somebody stole from them. She starts uttering curses. And Micah, upon hearing the curses, says, I should probably give the money back. And so then he fesses up and comes to mom and says, like, I'm the one who did it. Because she's cursing like, who stole this money? Busted. What does Micah do? I grew up, I had 4 siblings, 5 kids, there's 5 of us total. Next to us we grew up for the most of our childhood, was an empty lot. And so in that empty lot was a kid's dream, but probably a mother's nightmare, right? Because these 5 kids would go play out in said field, and then they would come home from said field all dirty. But every now and then, there was this perfect storm. And the perfect storm was a muddy field and freshly mopped floors. And we would come back in from that, and we were always told to wipe our feet before we came back inside. But every now and then, one of the kids would forget. And you would be back in the house, all 5 kids back in the house, and you would hear my mom cursing. Not cursing like you may be thinking, but she would be thinking like, you would hear clearly from upstairs, who trucked mud into the house? And I'll tell you what, that question still today sends fear to me. And as a kid, you're thinking like, oh no, I'm going to look at the bottom of my shoes. And may there not be mud on the bottom of my shoes. And you would look down and hopefully, fortunately, see no mud on the bottom of your shoes. You'd be like, that's it, I'm good, it's not me. But when you look down and you saw the mud on your shoes, thought to yourself, I got to go downstairs and maybe start mopping or something. Busted. And so this is what we see Micah, right? This mixture of the fear of the wrath of his mom plus these curses that she's uttering. And so he goes and he says, Mom, I'm the one who stole the silver. Now, moms, you may know what this is like. your son, your child does something, and you're thinking to yourself, like they do something you like that goes against everything you believe, and you think to yourself, whose kid is this? It's not my kid. Who taught you that? Who taught you how to behave like that? Who's not my kid? But if actually your kid comes back to you and says something like, Mom, I know that I misbehaved and I'm sorry. Like, whoa! No prouder moment as a kid. No prouder moment as a parent. And so here we actually see this, and we see this. And so that's actually why the mom goes from cursing, right, to then what? To blessing. Like, okay, well, Mom, I'm the one that stole it. Okay, take back the curses, and that's what she says. I bless you. May I bless you. And so we see this transfer. She takes it back, and then she says, I want to dedicate this money to the Lord. And we think, well, at this point we go, what a moving story, right? Micah, son, steals money from his mom's purse. Mom goes into her purse to get the money. She realizes it's missing. She starts asking people, who took this money? Who took this money? Son comes to the mom and says, Mom, I'm the one who took the money. You go, yes. They reconcile. She says, I'll bless you. There's a reconciliation. And then she says, I want you to take this money and I want you to dedicate this money to the Lord. To which we go, this is beautiful. This is it. This is the picture. I want you to take this money, dedicate it to the Lord, and I want you to create an idol. To which you should probably go like, wait, what? Like, you had me on this story. And then we get to this point, like, wait, I'm sorry, come again? Because what it sounded like is that you said, I want you to take this money and go craft a graven image, an idol. I mean, for some of you that are familiar with the Ten Commandments, you would know that this is commandment number 2. I mean, this is clearly commandment number 2. And what she's saying, I want you to bless the Lord by breaking commandment number 2. Go make an image for me. And so this is what happens. The money's taken to the silversmith. He makes an idol. And here's the thing. Micah thinks to himself, why just make an idol? I should go more. I should really go overboard on this one. In fact, actually, what good is an idol if you don't have a shrine? You got to have a shrine. If you're going to have an idol, you got to have a shrine. Got to set up a shrine in the house so that we can put that idol on that shrine. And if we're going to have an idol, we're going to have a shrine. Got to have a priest. You can't have a priest without having an ephod. So that was what the priest would wear, like this breastplate that the priest would wear. So he makes the ephod. Then he installs his son as the priest. To which you may think to yourself, wait a minute. It sounds like this guy is making up his own religion. I mean, he's made the idol, he's set up the shrine, he's installed his priest, he has then clothed his priest, all in his house. Like, it sounds like this guy's making his own religion. In fact, I think I saw a Netflix documentary on this guy setting up his own religion. I go, that's actually exactly what he's doing. And so Micah, he sets up his own religion. And interesting, there's this phrase then that you may be familiar with if you've read through the book of Judges, that you see actually throughout the book of Judges. There was no king in the land, right? There was no king in the land, and everybody was doing what was right in their own eyes. It's interesting because this idea that there's no king in the land is that sometimes people think that phrase is there is to highlight the fact that there is a leadership vacuum in Israel. So this actually shows us there's a vacuum of leadership in Israel. There was no king in the land, but I don't think that's what it's about. Because if you've read the other 6 books leading up to this, you know what you'd realize? They had a king. There was a king in the land. God was their king. I mean, this has been made very, very clear leading up to this point, that God is to be their king. And so when we get to phrases like this in the book of Judges that says, there is no king in the land, know that this is a condemnation of the people of Israel more than it's a recommendation for a monarchy, as if the king will solve everything. Oh, there's no king. The king will solve everything. It's like, no, this is a condemnation on the people of Israel. God's like, I'm your king. I'm your king. And then he looks at what the nations is doing, and he goes, there's no king in this land. I'm not the king of this land. I don't know who their king is, but it's not me. Because if I was their king, they wouldn't look like this. And so I think it's a condemnation on the people of Israel. Because God is their king, but it's a condemnation for a second reason too. In other words, there's no king in the land. So guess what? You can't blame this on. You can't blame this on the king. I mean, later on, trust me, hear me on this. Israel's going to get plenty of bad kings. Plenty of bad kings. And they're going to be like, oh, all of this sin, all of this rebellion is because we have bad leadership. And what he's saying here, there's no king. So you don't actually get to blame this story on poor leadership. What this is here, this is sin and rebellion. And this is sin and rebellion by the people and of the people. And this other place of this where it says that everyone was doing right in their own eyes. It's interesting because I've heard that quoted a lot lately. Josh, it just seems like everybody's doing what's right in their own eyes. Do you know what the unstated second half of that verse is? It's not there, but it's sort of implied. Everyone was doing what was right in their own eyes. And then implied, and no one was doing what was right in the eyes of the Lord. That's the implication. And it's interesting where today we want to hold to that first part. Like, Josh, everybody's doing what's right in their own eyes. And I go, yeah, totally agree with you. Yeah, Josh, everybody's doing what's right in their own eyes. That's the problem today. And I go, so I have a quick question. Are you included in the everybody? Well, no, okay. So everybody else is doing what's right in their own eyes, while I am doing what is right in the eyes of the Lord. I go, oh, that's a bit convenient. Micah set up his own religion. Verse 7. Now there was a young man of Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he sojourned there. And the man departed from the town of Bethlehem in Judah to sojourn where he could find a place. And as he journeyed, he came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. And Micah said to him, where do you come from? And he said to him, I am a Levite of Bethlehem in Judah, and I am going to sojourn where I may find a place. And Micah said to him, stay with me, and be to me a father and a priest. And I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, and a suit of clothes, and your living. And the Levite went in. And the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man became to him like one of his sons. And Micah ordained the Levite, and the young man became his priest. And he was in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, now I know that the Lord will prosper me, because I have a Levite as a priest. The Levites were seen to be as the legitimate line of the priest. So if you wanted to be a priest in Israel, you had to come from the tribe of Levi. You had to be a Levite. And so as we see this, is that then the Levites become sort of the spiritual leaders of Israel. Well, that's the way that it was intended to be. And so here he goes, I got a Levite. And this Levite is wandering into the hills of Ephraim. He just comes in wandering. I go, what are the odds? What are the odds? And so here is this Levite who comes wandering in. The Levite comes wandering in, and then Ephraim goes, what are the odds? What are the odds? I mean, I have a house with an idol and a shrine. and an ephod, and all I need is a legitimate priest. Sure, I've got a son, but yeah, he's all right. Yeah, we need a real priest in town. This place, like, what are the odds? It's interesting, by the way, right? A lot of times we think that when things are a coincidence, that they're God ordained. Sometimes people are like, Josh, look at this. What are the odds? I go, I don't know what the odds are, but it's not a good thing. But I know, but what are the odds? As if like coincidence is the way in which God just normally works. And there are times, by the way, that God does work in magnificent ways, and we think to ourselves, what are the odds? But there's times like this we go, what are the odds? I go, I don't know what the odds are, but I do know this. The odds that God's on board is much lower, because God is not going to be on board with this. You've already set up your own religion, and now this Levite has come in, and he's now found a home. And I think to myself, how did this conversation go? You know, the Levite wanders in. Michael goes, who are you? I'm a Levite. No way. Yeah. Okay. Well, here, I got a deal for you. What I would like for you to do, because I've already built the idol, I've already got the shrine. What I would love for you to come with me. I would love for you to live with me. I would love for you to live in my house. I would love to give you the clothes to wear. I would love for me to call you Dad. I want you to be my priest. To which all of us probably in this room and online go, this sounds a little creepy. Like, yeah, it sounds really creepy. But that's not what the Levite says, right? What does the Levite get? Sweet deal. I'm in. I go, oh no. And by the way, this is how you know, right, when you've wandered far from God, is when rebellion starts making sense. When rebellion starts making sense, you go, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. And all that it is just outright rebellion, and it starts to make sense. I go, oh, you know that you've wandered far from God. And so Micah, what he's done is he's set up his own religion, and then he goes out and he hires his own priest. Chapter 18, verse 1. In those days, there was no king in Israel. And in those days, the tribe of the people of Dan was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in. For until then, no inheritance among the tribes of Israel had fallen to them. So the people of Dan sent out 5 able men from the whole number of their tribe, from Zorah and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land, to explore it. And they said to them, go and explore the land. And they came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. And so you have this Micah who set up his own religion. You have this Levite who is now a priest in that religion. And then you have the Danites who all of a sudden show up. Now, the Danites were one of the 12 tribes of Israel. And interestingly enough, when Israel was conquered, and as the book of Joshua closes, is actually the land that's being divided up. Now, people are still like inhabiting the land, but as the land was divided up, it was that tribe's job, so it was divided up as an inheritance, it was that tribe's job to go take and inhabit that land. And interestingly enough, you could actually read in the first part of Judges chapter 1, verses 34 through 36. And what actually happens with the Danites is they get land. They inherit land. And they try to go take that land, and they get pushed back up into the hills. And so instead of taking the land where it's going to be very, very difficult, they get pushed back up into the hills, and then they come looking for another land because the task that God had given them was too daunting, and the enemy was too formidable. And so what they start to do is what most of us do when things get too difficult, too hard, is we just start looking for easier, greener pastures. And this is exactly what the people of Dan do. And so they've been given a land, an inheritance, which is one of the things I think the author is being sarcastic here by saying a land had not fallen to them yet. A land had not fallen in their lap. And so they're going around looking, where can we go where a land will just sort of fall in our lap? Cheap and easy. Doesn't cost us anything. And so they're looking around, and guess where what are the odds? Guess what are the odds? Just guess where they happen to find themselves. They happen to find themselves in the hill country of Ephraim. And not just any hill country of Ephraim spot, but like a very specific spot in Micah's house. And so it's interesting. You think about the story so far. Micah has given up true worship to pursue false worship. The Levite has given up, as we'd say, service, honorable service to God, to pursue the monetized service to man. And the Danites, they have given up God's gift, his inheritance that he's given them. They've given up their inheritance to pursue something that is cheaper and easier. Verse 3 says this: when they were at the house, when they were by the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite, and they turned aside and said to him, "Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What is your business?" And he said to them, "This is how Micah has dealt with me. He hired me, and I have become his priest." And they said to him, "Inquire of God, please, that we may know whether the journey on which we are setting out will succeed." And the priest said to them, "Go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord." And so they recognize Micah, and quite possibly not because they knew Micah from before, but quite possibly because of his accent, right? So like a southern accent in Manhattan, you go, "Whoa, where are you from?" "You're not from here." "I know where you come from. You come from the south. What are you doing up here?" So it's quite possible it's based on accent. And so they hear the Levite talking, and they go, this Levite talking, they go, where'd you come from? How'd you get here?" "Well, let me tell you the sweet deal that I got here. So I just happened to show up here. This guy was looking for a Levite. I'm a Levite. He hires me. I'm his priest. And so I'm his priest." And then the Danites are thinking, "This is amazing, because we're on a journey and we need somebody from the Lord to tell us if this is of the Lord. Like, what are the odds? This is amazing. Will you tell us, is the journey that we are on of the Lord?" And I love what the Levite says in true Levite fashion, right? He speaks in the most ambiguous way possible. "Well, the Lord sees the path. Go in peace." It's like, what does that mean? It's even intentionally. There's other places where God knows your path. There's places like that where he's like, "I know the path that you're on." But this is actually super vague and intentionally so. God sees it. So now you can go. I mean, I think about somebody came into my office and Josh, like, we're talking, like, "Josh, man, I had this job opportunity, and I've been really weighing the pros and the cons about what God would want me to do. What do you think he wants me to do?" And I just said, God sees it. "Yeah, but like, what should I do?" "God sees it." "Yeah, but what should I?" "You can get out of my office now, but God, go in peace, because God sees it." And where the Levite speaks in vagueness, the Danites fill in the blanks, because that's what we do. Right? You mean, think about a lot of times what psychics do, right? The psychics will speak in enough vagueness, enough generalities, until you start filling in the things that you want to hear. And so he speaks in this vagueness. The Danites fill in what they want to hear. By the way, sort of as a side note, if God is always telling you what you want to hear, maybe it's not God that you're hearing from. And so we see this. Verse 7. Then the 500 men departed and came to Laish and saw the people who were there, how they lived in security, after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting, lacking nothing that is in the earth, and possessing wealth, and how they were far from the Sidonians and had no dealings with anyone. And so these spies go out from the hill country and Micah's house in Ephraim, and they find this place called Laish. And what they find at Laish, they go, this is the perfect target. They're unexpecting, right? They're totally secure. They're quiet. They're keeping to themselves. And yet the land has so many resources, and they're a wealthy people. They are the perfect target. We found the thing. We are out looking for the thing that is cheaper and easier, that will cost us less and be easier for us to take. And guess what? We found it. You know, the Danites who had given up God's gift in order to pursue something that was cheaper and easier. And guess what we find in verse 7? They found it. It was perfect. What are the odds? This is the land that we've been looking for. And so the spies, what happens then, the spies go back, the 5 spies go back to the rest of their tribe to bring them what they would appear to, that would think is like, this is great news. This is really great news. Guys, we found the place. These quiet, unsuspecting, you know, it's like they're an older person. They have lots of money. They live alone. They have no friends or family that's nearby them. They're the perfect target. But look at verse 14. This is what happens when the men come back. The 5 spies. Then the 5 spies who had gone to scout out the country of Laish said to their brothers, do you know that in these houses there are an ephod, household gods, a carved image, and a metal image? Now therefore consider what you will do. Oh, turns out that the 5 spies weren't just looking for other lands. Turns out that the spies are going to do, right? Spy is going to spy. They're spying out other lands, but guess what else they were spying out? Micah's house. And they're like, do you know, by the way, what's here? And the way that that's translated at the end, actually literally is translated is, you know what to do. So the 5 spies tell all of the brothers, this house is loaded. It's got the gods. It's got the images. It's got the ephod. You know what to do. And the brothers hear that. Because look at verse 15. They turn aside there and came to the house of the young Levite. So they go off their path. They come to the house of the young Levite at the home of Micah and ask him about his welfare. Now the 600 of the men of the Danites, armed with their weapons, so 600 of them armed with their weapons of war, stood by the entrance of the gate to the house, by the way. And the 5 men who had gone to scout out the land went up and entered and took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, while the priest stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 armed men with weapons of war. And so these 600 men, they come up, they see the young Levite. Hey, what's up? Not much, man, just hanging out. The 5 go into the house and start robbing the house, while the Levites out with the other 600 men. Verse 18, and when these went into Micah's house and took the carved image and the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, the priest said to them, what are you doing? And they said to him, keep quiet. put your hand on your mouth and come with us, and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be the priest to the household of one man, or to be a priest to a tribe and to a clan, an Israel?" And the priest's heart was glad. He took the ephod and the household gods and the carved image and went along with the people. And so they show up to Micah's house, and they go to rob the place. And the Levite at first, he's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And literally the way they translate it is like, basically, they tell them, "Shut up. Shut up and come with us." Because here's the deal. Would you rather be the priest of one house or the priest of a whole tribe in Israel? To which the Levite goes, this is had made his heart glad. He goes, yeah, this is the promotion. To which I think to go, like, what did you think was going to happen? So here's the problem, right? If you're the Levite, if you are going to give up honorable service to God and pursue the monetized, right, service to man, you're going to go to the highest bidder. And what we see the Levite do, which is what would make sense, he goes to the highest bidder. And interestingly enough, he's the one that ends up robbing Micah, right? Because that's what it says, that he's the one who took it. So, you guys stay out here. I know where the good stuff's at. You guys stay out there. I'm going to gather it all up, and then I'm going to come with you. And so that's what the Levite does. He robs Micah, and then he goes with the Danites. And the Danites start making their way to go take over Laish. Now, in the middle of this, Micah figures out that he's been robbed. And he's got a good idea of who did it and where they're headed. And so he actually goes with some men to track them down. And we're not going to read this part of the story, but the Danites turn around to him and say, "What are you going to do? What are you coming out here for? To get my stuff back." I'm paraphrasing that, by the way. No, come on, what are you going to do? You're not going to do anything to us. Either you turn around or we beat you down, but you have the choice. Do you know what Micah does? He turns around because he realizes he's already defeated, and he goes home empty-handed. And so the Danites then make their way to Laish. Verse 27. But the people of Dan took what Micah had made, and the priests who belonged to him. And by the way, notice how the author says, this priest belonged to Micah. This priest did not belong to the Lord. Very clear. It was Micah's images, Micah's idols, Micah's priests. The people of Dan took what Micah had made, the priests who belonged to him, and they came to Laish, to a people quiet and unsuspecting, and struck them with the edge of the sword, and burned the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no dealings with anyone. It was in the valley that belongs to Beth Rehob, and they named the city Dan, after Dan, the ancestor, who was born in Israel. But the name of the city was Laish at first. And so the Danites, they go in, they kill the people, unexpecting. I mean, the author's very clear. They were they did not see this coming. They were kind of like they weren't bothering anybody. They were cut off. They had no one to come and save them, vulnerable and exposed, and insecure. And then the Danites come in and they wipe them out. You know what's interesting about this story? One of the things is the people that we feel most sorry for are the people of Laish. Micah, we're like, yeah. The Levite, we're like, oh my gosh. The Danites, are like, come on. But it's actually the people of Laish that we actually have the most sympathy for and the most like pain for. We grieve that the most. But here was the crazy thing? Is that the people of Laish, technically they were Canaanites. And then if you're not unfamiliar with this point of the story, is that the Canaanites are the enemies of God. That's been very clear up to this point. And just here the author writes a story in such a way that we feel bad for we feel worse for the enemies of God than we do the people of Israel. We feel more pain. We're on the side of the enemies of God more than we are on the side of the people of Israel. This lets you know how upside down this whole thing has become. And it may appear as if everyone got exactly what they wanted. Micah got his false worship, although then now he's empty-handed. The Levite got the prestige and the money that he was looking for. I mean, now he's the priest of the whole tribe in this wonderful land that was very wealthy. The Danites got their land that they were looking for. Everybody got what they wanted. Or did they? Going back to verse 30, going forward to verse 30, and the people of Dan set up the carved images for themselves. And Jonathan, the son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of captivity of the land. So they set up Micah's carved image and he made as long as the house of God was in Shiloh. Did you get that? The author's big reveal at the end. This unnamed Levite. Do you know who this unnamed Levite is? And by the way, there's a reason why he holds the name to the end of the story. Do you know who this Levite is? It is none other than the grandson of Moses. The great Moses. The Ten Commandments, Mount Sinai, part the Red Sea, bring in the plagues. Moses. This is his grandson. The Moses who could not be bought by Pharaoh is now going to the highest bidder in a stolen land. And the Danites, it's very clear here that this beautiful land, this wealthy land, you catch it there? This is the land that will lead to their captivity. And Micah ends up alone. It's true that as we read a story like this, and we think to ourselves, like, where is God in all of this? Right? Where is God in all of this? I love the last line of this chapter, which is, the house of God was at Shiloh. Fill in the blanks for you. This was not God. God is not here. He was not worshipped here. God is actually somewhere else, being worshipped somewhere else. He is not their king. This is not him. He's totally somewhere else. And so we ask the question, where does this rebellion lead? I'll tell you where this rebellion leads. Where this rebellion against God, what it looks like, I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like a people who run away from the very thing that would free them and pursue the thing that will only trap them. I think what this story is about, and really what Judges is about, but specifically what this story is about, is that when you rebel against God, you run from the very thing that would free you and pursue the very thing that ends up in the end just trapping you. And so we actually see them. We see them running, right? We see them running from the God that would free them and then pursuing the idols that will only trap them. And so this is the story of Judges. This over and over again. The people of God running from the God that would free them and pursuing the idols that will trap them. And all we see in Judges is this story over and over again, till we get to the end and we get a culmination of this story. I think it would be nice and easy if we could read a story like this and we just go, oh, silly Micah. Oh, silly Levite, Jonathan's grandson of Moses. Oh, silly Danites, why would you do this? The problem is, the reason why we can't do that is because not only is it their story on these pages, but this story bleeds over onto the pages of your life. This story spills off the pages of Judges and spills on to the pages of your life. It spills onto the pages of my life. And your rebelling against God and my rebelling against God, you have run from the God who will free you to pursue that which will entrap you. Now, interestingly enough, there's 66 books in the Bible. Judges, like I said in the beginning, it's number 7. I find the story here, so it's not that. I mean, there's a lot more of the story that comes after this. And so even when we come to the book of Judges in the end, where these people are running from the very God that's looking to free them and then pursuing the idols that will entrap them, this actually comes relatively early in the story. And I think to myself, if I'm God, which I'm not, but if I'm God, I come to Judges 17 and 18. If I'm God, I'm like, I'm out. I've been trying. I've been really trying. Like, I've got stories upon stories of me trying. I go, I'm out. But the beautiful thing for you and the beautiful thing for me is that's not our God. From Genesis to Revelation, we see a God who, when his people run from him to pursue that which will entrap them, we see a God who goes out and pursues them. I mean, isn't that the story of Adam and Eve? Right? I mean, they rebelled against God. They pursued the very thing that ended up entrapping them. And what does God do? God comes after them. He pursues them. He's the one who comes into the garden. I mean, this is the story of Genesis. We see the story in Exodus. We see the story in Judges. This same God who's pursuing us, even though we're pursuing another lover. I mean, it should not surprise you then that these are the stories that Jesus tells. Stories of the lost coin, of the prodigal son, of the lost sheep. The one who is pursuing another, God is the one who pursues them. Because this is the Jesus that we follow. It's one of the beautiful things about the gospel. You see, the gospel does not tell a story that we were pursuing other things and then finally we realized how bad that thing is and then finally we decided to pursue God. That's not the gospel. That's not the story. That's not even your story. It's not my story. The story of the gospel is while we were still pursuing that which would entrap us, the one who would free us pursued us. And that's the twist in the story. That's the thing we didn't see that coming. And so in you and for me, and the places in which we would rebel against God. We would rebel against God, run away from the one who will free us, only to pursue that which will entrap us. And maybe you've been thinking to yourself, I don't know where this ends, but I don't like the journey. And here's the beautiful thing. You've got a twist in your story. And the twist in your story is the same twist in the story of the book of Judges, the same twist in the story that we see with Adam and Eve in the book of Genesis, is that in your pursuit of the thing that will entrap you, you have a God who's pursuing you. And that's going to make the difference. I would encourage you this week that as you reflect on this story to think about that. Even ask God, where am I running from you, the one that is going to free me? And I've been pursuing that which will only entrap me. My prayer for you this week is that God, the pursuer, from Genesis to Revelation, the pursuer will get you. And because he does, and when he does, that twist in the story will change everything.